Okay, and we're off. Hello, welcome everyone. Nicely packed room. We have some journalists in the room. Gamesindustry.biz, our friends here. So we're expecting a glowing write-up of this session. We're going to be going for 45 minutes on the state of mobile. I'm told that one of your friends, Ian, said this could have been called the shocking state of mobile development, but it's not going to be that sensational. It's going to be a very sensible and wise conversation about what's going on in mobile right now. Maybe we'll start with introductions. Ian, do you want to take it away, and then we'll move across through the panel?
Yeah, sure. My name's Ian Masters. I'm the founder and CEO of Flick Games. We make a solitaire game on mobile. I've been making games for about 22 years. Started as a programmer making PlayStation racing games. Made my first mobile game in 2003. When I was unemployed with a group of friends, and it got nominated for a BAFTA against 5 really big brands, and I accidentally started my first games company. And so, yeah, 20 years later, I feel a bit crazy when I tell people I'm obsessed with solitaire, but it's really cool. We commission diverse artists from around the world to make really beautiful cards that players then collect in game. So it's pretty good.
That's awesome. I didn't know you'd been in the industry for that long. Wow.
I started when I was 10.
Hi, I'm Alice Bowman. I'm a product lead at Mag Interactive. I'm the product lead on Wordsy specifically, which is one of Mag's word games. I've been in the industry for about 9 years, and before that I've been at Charmix Games, NetSpeak, King, Outplay, a few other places. I have only recently moved into the product side of things, so this kind of strategizing and looking at KPIs is relatively new to me. I was previously in the design trenches before that. So, yeah.
Cool. I'm Danny Gray. I'm Chief Creative Officer at Ustwo Games. So mostly known for Monument Valley. More recently, we did a game called Death to the Memories Between for Netflix, and we did Assemble with Care and Albert Wildlife Adventure for Apple Arcade. So yeah, predominantly kind of subscription-based stuff at the minute.
And I should introduce myself, shouldn't I? I'm Neil Long. I'm the founder of Mobilegamer.biz. It's a mobile games industry website that I launched in March of last year. So quite new on the scene. And this is my first panel of any kind. So be gentle with me. We're going to start with discoverability, which is a big issue in mobile right now. Post ATT, I worked at Apple for a long time, and they are sort of kind of responsible for a lot of the woes people are seeing in user acquisition. By kind of, I mean directly. Google also are clamping down a little bit in the privacy space. So I wondered, post ATT in the modern landscape, how are players discovering your games at the moment, and how is that different from years gone by?
I mean, I can start if you want.
Yeah, please do.
I mean, we never lent that much into that side of things anyway. So we were mainly known for premium games in the past. So a lot of our weight of discoverability went on either support from the big platform holders, or it was traditional PR and marketing, like in the traditional sense of like magazines and journalistic outlets and everything else. So yeah, heavily reliant on word of mouth and platform support. And that kind of hasn't changed. Like even now when we've transitioned into subscription services, I'd say the one main thing that's changed is, as other people have seen, like any kind of featuring on any app stores is a fraction of what it used to be, which used to be huge for us. So yeah, we're even more reliant on the platform holders backing our games and just trying to make waves ourselves. So not that much has changed in the last 10 years for us, really. So maybe I'm a bit of an outlier on the table.
Yeah, I think maybe Mag and Flick are kind of more UA dependent studios. Could you maybe expand upon that?
Definitely Mag is. So we've been quite lucky in that we've not launched a game since the ATT stuff has happened. But I guess also that makes launching a game in this environment quite scary and unknown. The impact it's had on Wordsy has been pretty big. I think, yeah, last year we found a sweet spot with UA where we were able to, even without the targeting, be able to bring in some users that were working very well for us. But there was sort of a limitation to that, and we've almost kind of used up all of the users we're going to get from it. So we've now scaled down UA a bit, but we're still experimenting. And I think experimenting has really been the name of the game for our user acquisitions department, because they're really just throwing a lot of things at the wall and seeing what sticks. And they're doing a great job of it. But it is a time of just trying everything new, because we're almost having to just learn how to do it all over again.
And Ian, you were saying that earlier in the lounge that the shifting sort of landscape of UA might be an opportunity for some in terms of moving back from that inorganic kind of performance marketing approach and moving into kind of more organic, more traditional sort of ways of getting discovered.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, every business in the world, when it comes down to it, is cost of customer acquisition and lifetime value, how much you make from the customer. And every business is that. But mobile, because of, direct like per player attribution and knowing exactly how much a campaign is making, everything just became like hyper optimized towards certain design patterns and certain types of games, your build and battle, and eventually, hyper casual came out of that because it fits, it found a niche and that everything optimized towards. And I think with, social casino, another one. And I think with the privacy changes, because those things are no longer possible, my hope is that it will bring about kind of new designs that are successful, and it won't just be the same games, just optimized and optimized and optimized, but there will be more opportunity for creativity. That's what I would like to think. Whether that will happen and how long it will take to happen, I don't know. I mean, we started our game launch 3 years ago, so this was just pre-deprecation of IDFA. So we decided that we were just going to do UA on Android initially and not on iOS, because we would be able to retain those numbers for longer and work on that. And that's worked for us, but we haven't been doing UA at scale. It's really been about getting enough people in the funnel to drive the amount of data that we need for retention and analytics while we continue to refine and improve the product. But one of the things that's really helped us has been the organics, and particularly from Google Play. And I don't know what you guys find, but they can change dramatically very quickly in one direction or the other. So that's a big part of the battle is constantly optimizing screenshots and optimizing store descriptions and trying to join these things up in the funnel as well. But organics can be amazing if you get them right.
Alice, I wondered if I could pick up on the point you were saying about throwing a lot of stuff at the wall. Maybe could you let us in? Sort of maybe explain a few things that have worked and a few things that haven't in terms of sort of acquiring new users in the current landscape?
Yeah, sure. So we found that obviously you're looking at different creative campaigns as well and testing different ads against each other to see what's best. Then you sort of end up with your benchmark and everything else gets measured against that. But also with just moving around the campaigns and targeting different users and things like that has been a real part of the experimentation. And some of the platforms that we were advertising on, it's just turned out to not be worth it for us. So we've really had to refine that as well. I think with Mags Games in particular, what we've been trying to do with our user acquisition is focus on users that we can retain for a long time and get a lot of value from, which is a slightly more premium sort of UA approach than what most casual games would go for. Like, I think that, bigger scale games would just be looking at the sheer amount of users you can get in. and then optimizing from there. But a number, like getting it as high as possible, would be the main thing. Whereas I think we're happy to take a lower number of users as long as we know that they're going to stay for longer and spend.
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder if there's more of a move to kind of optimize the players you have without sounding too brutal about it. Optimize what you have rather than launch a new game. A few months ago, one of the biggest stories on my site in the last few months is Playtika saying that they're not going to launch any new games until the marketing landscape improves. So I wondered if you guys are kind of shifting your focus more on the players you have rather than acquiring new ones.
Yeah, I think MAG is doing a bit of both. So can't talk about any of the new stuff, but there is stuff being worked on. And that if we get to a position where we can launch a game, we will go for it, even in the environment that it is now. But at the same time, we've got a lot of strong games, and the company's been around for a long time. So we've got these user bases that we acquired when it was a more favorable climate, and we want to try and hold on to them. So we're really looking at how we can look after our users, and particularly the more like valuable ones that we've sort of segmented, to see how we can improve their player experience. So yeah, live ops and just trying to take care of them as much as possible is very important to us.
Yeah. And how about other sort of ways of getting discovered? Are you dancing on TikTok? Are you using Discord, community-based means of discovery to reach players that you might not have found before?
Yeah. So we've we've commissioned diverse independent artists from across the world since the last 3 years. We now at 43. And we've always been super artist friendly. So we pay artists keep their IP, we get a license for the game, and then we promote the artists in the game, their socials, their shops, social media, everything. So we've actually now started approaching kind of bigger artists with big social followings. So the last 4 artists we signed all had over 1 million followers. And they are now promoting the game as part of the deal. So we're trying that. The last artist we signed, Cyanide and Happiness. Does anyone know them? Okay, so I get a few people nods, and a lot of people don't because they just don't know the name. But probably everybody does. And yeah, so that's great. They've done a Tasteful Nudes card deck, which is just amazing. So hopefully that will be really good for us.
Tasteful Nudes.
Tasteful Nudes.
Nice. Try that on TikTok. It'll blow up, I'm sure. Danny, where are you finding your players?
We're trying. Like it's a big change for us. Like as I said, platform-wise, there's potentially kind of less support than there used to be. So we are trying to get more into the social aspect of things. I always feel a bit weird getting hold of the TikTok. That's why you've got to employ young people, right? To help let you know how to access people. But yeah, it's definitely, because of the kind of scale we're talking about, it is less of a focus potentially than if we were doing something that was like hundreds of millions of people, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
You're so right about like hiring people who use the platform or who are part of the community you're trying to talk to is actually really, really valuable. Because I wouldn't know where to start. I mean, I use TikTok, but I don't use it in the way.
Yeah, I'm not going to go on and just go, hey, kids.
Yeah.
Right now.
It can be great to have a community manager who's actually familiar with those spaces.
Yeah, for sure. I've been asked to. People say I should promote myself. I don't think anyone wants that. Yeah, let's move on from discoverability to going cross-platform. I think increasingly mobile being tough right now. Mobile game developers are moving on to PC, moving into web games in a lot of respects, sort of browser games, and trying out all sorts of sort of interesting new avenues to mitigate for the sort of drop in revenue on mobile through in-app purchase and ads. So I know both of you guys, Ian and Danny, both of your games both of you have sort of transformed from mobile-only developers into PC. Could you tell us about what sort of prompted that transition and some of the sort of do's and don'ts for anyone in the room who might be thinking of doing the same
I'll
thing?
go. It's I mean, from the mobile perspective, we always kind of felt like we had a bit more of a home towards the PC and console audience than the super casual audience on mobile. So it was a bit more of a natural transition. So we started it with putting, I think Albo was the first Steam launch that we did. And part of the reason for that is, as we've moved towards subscription-based games, we obviously have the benefit of the security of being on those platforms financially. But in comparison to when we were launching Monument Valley 1 on the App Store, we're not exposed to that kind of upside in the way that we used to be, right? Like we can be secure and we can have development fees paid for and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, how are we going to get another game that's still paying the bills 8 years later, which is the holy grail of what we want, right? Like we need to be able, if we launch 5 games, we want one of them to be quite big and we want 4 of them to kind of be a bit so-so. So it kind of like forced our hands a little bit to kind of expand the number of people who are going to play the games, because again, subscription platforms are not the same size of user base that we used to have either, right? Very, very kind of young stage platforms. So yeah, we wanted to be able to expand the kind of number of people that we're appealing to, but also expose ourselves to a little bit more of that financial upside. The difficult thing with it has been part of our design focus. So if we try and be the most platform perfect, like touchscreen game and small form factor game, the more we go down that path, the harder and harder it's going to be to adapt that to a larger screen and a completely different piece of hardware that people interact with in different ways. So trying to bridge that gap is proving a little bit difficult. I think that in some ways, the last game we launched, Desta, I feel like not only were we aiming for 3 different platforms in mobile and PC and console, it's always just aiming for 3 different types of people, right, who want different things. And I think at times I let too much of those 3 audiences get in my head and maybe made a few too many sacrifices instead of being hyper-focused on exactly who the game was going to be for. So I think that's a risk that we've definitely learned from. And I think an important kind of lesson I've learned as well is not talking about things as ports. Like a good multi-platform game is one that's been designed as a multi-platform game from the beginning so that we can avoid a lot of those design mistakes. So instead of going all the way down the mobile path and going, hey, how does this work on PC? Really trying to, from the get-go through our development gates, figure out exactly how it's going to work on all 3 of those things from jump, not just, 6 months before launch. So the biggest things we've tried to learn, financial upside, audience size, but also trying to make sure that we design for all those platforms from the beginning.
And could you tell us a little bit, sticking with you, about working with Netflix and Apple, the platforms that you're working with right now, and any do's and don'ts for working with those guys? Maybe don't.
So we're definitely really, really close with both platform holders. It's been amazing to see how much they're both committing to these things. When it comes to designing, say, a pitch for a subscription-based game, I think really it's about trying to be honest about what that niche is. There's no point in making something for a subscription platform that would exist as a free-to-play title on the App Store, right? Equally, there's no point in doing something that would be better as a PC console game for a subscription-based platform. It's about doing something that's still for that form factor, that interaction scheme, but also a more casual audience as well. So trying to be able to do something that still requires retention-based design to a certain extent. But yeah, really trying to nail something that fits in that middle ground between casual and PC console is like the number one thing. I wish that there were more across both platforms. I wish that there was a bigger emphasis on short form content. I'm always going to say that, right? Because of the things we've traditionally made. Sometimes I feel there's a bit too much of a leaning towards games that last forever. I think I would hate for the idea of casual-based short-form games to disappear. We see those things persist on PC and console, but there's a whole area of games that are kind of dying a little bit on mobile that makes me immensely sad. So, still pushing for a lot of those things to exist on subscription-based platforms. But yeah, just be honest about what it is. Don't just try and do a free-to-play game and go, oh, it'd be great. Some really secured revenue. Let's pitch this as a subscription game.
I think, just to add to that point, I have actually noticed a few titles that have gone into arcade and Netflix that were in soft launch, free to play games that were in soft launch, maybe weren't doing the business. Apple and Netflix came along, put it on in their catalog. They had a period in there getting, some solid revenue, and they're actually a lot of them are actually back out in the wild App Store. So you can, if you have a soft launch game that isn't quite working and kind of would fit into Apple Arcade and Netflix. Maybe don't rule it out entirely.
Yeah.
But I think what those platforms are really looking for is particularly Apple is sort of family focused and branded stuff. Yeah. Netflix is kind of cooler, more indie stuff, as well as established sort of IP.
And it's also, it's a great way to develop your own IP in that way as well, right? Like you've got a secure place to develop something from the ground up. There's no reason why you can't do another version of that game or a sequel, or as you said, take it back off. It's a really sure thing to do something with security, right?
Yeah, I think those deals are a little bit more flexible than they once were. So when both platforms were first introduced, they were quite sort of strict on exclusivity and things like that. So it is a little bit more flexible if you want to work with those platforms. Let's talk about alternatives. So browser games, YouTube playables is apparently a thing, according to some reports, and alternate app stores. Have any of you looked into those as alternative sort of revenue streams? Because I know, to go back to Playticker again, they're going straight to consumer with a lot of their games. So they're sort of skipping in-app purchase and getting their most dedicated players to sign in through a web shop, and they skip the 30%. So that is increasingly an important sort of way to do business in mobile. I don't know if any of you guys have explored those alternative options, and any thoughts on YouTube playables?
It's not something I've explored at MAG, but at previous companies. Yeah, YouTube playables and TikTok playables have been something that's been looked into. And I think it's an interesting space. I think like even using that almost as your UA to get people to actually then be directed towards the game is a really interesting angle. But I think in terms of profitability as a more standalone thing, you know, you're not really going to get the same like scalability as you would do with a like full game, at least in how it seems to me. Yeah,
I just happened to come across some of those playable games on TikTok one evening, and they are all hyper casual games that have been sort of ported over. So I think that might be, I know we don't have any hyper casual guys on the panel today, but I think that might be a good avenue for anyone in hyper casual as that market contracts as well. Moving into browser games and YouTube playables and TikTok, whatever TikTok is calling its games stuff, that might be a good avenue for those guys. Ian, I know that you're sort of going outside in-app purchase and ads with NFT functionality as well. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. It's we make a game that's all about collection of art. So for us, that NFTs like limited editions for players to collect is a very natural fit for us. We haven't done it yet, and we will only do it when the time is right. We could have probably exploited that a year or so ago, and we didn't because it's not what we're about. But I think it's something that can benefit players and artists and us. But we'll only do it when everything lines up and it's the right time. But we also don't really see it as a huge revenue generator. In fact, we see it mostly as engagement and people enjoying collecting the limited edition cards, feeling ownership of them, having meaningful ownership of them, and sure, trading them, and it might create some virality, but it's not. I think the numbers just don't add up for it to be a game-changing way to monetize a game. I think it's a great addition, and NFTs are a good technical solution to that. But that's what it should be seen as, another tool in the stack.
Yeah. Building a good game first before considering NFTs. Who'd have thought, right? It's mind-blowing.
Yeah. I from talking to some game developers who have put NFT stuff in their games, I think that first wave of like mad hype from sort of this time last year, mainly from investors and people in that space, has kind of gone away, and now the slightly more sensible, grounded work is happening where hyper engaged players, often very high spenders, they do want to buy NFTs in those games that they play every day, and it's another.
it's really interesting talking to kind of investors in the space, because previously, because we didn't have a token and there wasn't like a quick way out for them, we were of no interest to them at all. And since then, those that I've spoken to, they understand that, you know, we're building we're committed to one game and building a business that's about art and collection. Now all of a sudden that's you know, much more interesting to them, which is positive. But you know, and you know, we're not gonna take that money until we're sure it's the right thing for the community and the artists.
Yeah, I think we touched upon sort of long-term engagement a little bit earlier with live ops and talking around that. I think just to sort of look at it the opposite way, do you feel like there are ways that PC and console game developers could learn from sort of how we operate in mobile, which is sort of almost like everything is a live service game, and everything is about keeping people playing and offering it constant sort of incentives to keep doing that? I think an example from my website a couple of weeks ago is sort of comparing Fall Guys and Stumble Guys. So like Fall Guys came out, incredible success on PlayStation Plus, but I'm not sure if it sort of persisted as a live service. And then meanwhile on mobile, Stumble Guys, incredibly similar game, but has like a much more, much better developed live ops service and battle pass and so on. So I wondered if there are sort of tips and tricks, tripping up on tips and tricks there, that you might be able to offer to PC and console as developers, as the sort of barriers fall down between mobile, PC, and console.
Yeah, I mean, I think that games as a service is, you know, much bigger than just mobile, and you can kind of see a lot of games that, particularly franchises that have multiple games or installation packs. I'm thinking of The Sims as a really good example of this. They have a live content team that they've been recruiting for, and I think that when you look at that job advert, you can see where they're actually taking some lessons from mobile games and other games as a service, where you know, they're giving free content to the community to retain them across a longer life cycle, and to get them to buy those installation packs and keep playing The Sims, to get them ready for The Sims 5 and keep playing The Sims. They just want to make sure they're still engaged. And that sort of, you know, goal makes a lot of sense for any company that, you know, either is subscription based and they want you to be paying your subscription still, you know, months down the line, or that's going to be giving out a lot of installations and DLC and things like that. You know, anything that basically wants to keep the community engaged.
Sure. And Ian, you have sort of weekly content drops in Flick Solitaire, is that right? How is that sort of working for you?
Monthly. So a new deck goes in roughly every month, and that's a big thing to chat about, which is great. And there's a lot of, you know, players looking for the next new deck. We do things like, you know, every Friday it's thank Flick It's Friday, and you get double rewards on a Friday, and it's interesting to see when you're looking at analytics of, you know, Friday is always a bit higher in terms of time spent and things like that. So but we're still pretty basic in what we do, kind of live ops wise.
And Desta is kind of, I think when we spoke end of last year, maybe around the launch of that game, it was kind of billed as us two's kind of first foray into live service, or sort of more
kind of live ops. It's the first time
games.
we had regular content post launch instead of it being a fire and forget game. So, I mean, even for us, it's been a really good learning experience. We managed to deliver new level content every 2 weeks, which is unheard of for us, considering we shipped Forgotten Shores for Monument Valley 1 like 11 months after the game came out, right? Like, it takes us a long time to make content. So yeah, it was a really good kind of half step to us. Like we weren't very responsive. Like, we had to front load so much of the content development that we weren't really responding to how players were playing the game so much. We got a little bit at launch, but we had to get so ahead of the content pipeline that we weren't as responsive as we'd like. But it's a good learning process for us. And a couple of the games we've got in development now are leaning even a little bit more into that. But we've got a lot of learning to do. It's kind of like what you said about not jumping into something too fast. for us, it's going to be really important to how do we keep hold of the kind of content we love to make, which is meaningful and emotional and feels handcrafted and has a lot of thought put into it, whilst delivering regular content for people. I think it's going to take us a couple of years to get right, but we're trying.
We've had a bit of a change of mindset recently because we're such a small team. You know, the cliff face is here, and you're just trying to get the next build done and getting, you know, whatever's next on the list. And we've had a bit of a change of mindset to think about features for new players. You know, the optimizing, you know, first-time user experience, and you know, that first week of experience, and kind of separating those from the features that benefit kind of the longer-term community who've been with us longer and quality of life. Because there was a period of a couple of months where we were just focused on the new players, and you know, and we realized, you know, there's all these things that are on the list, and some of them are quite easy wins for, you know, existing long-term devoted players that we need to be doing at least some of these with every build that we do. So we're trying to balance those a bit more carefully now.
Great. And so we're at half an hour, so I'm gonna wrap up ish with a few final kind of what's next. I know it's tough out there. It feels like that's all I've been writing about the last 6 months is how bleak it is. But maybe each of you could give us one reason to be cheerful or one big trend that you see coming up.
I was going to say that. I know it seems like a big downer, right? But at the end of the day, we all get to make games. A lot of people don't get to say that, right? And that's amazing and it's beautiful. So even though things might be a little bit bad, we're very, very lucky as well, right? I
think that, to be fair, the ones that are miserable are the ones who bet their entire company on performance marketing. So, you know, it balances out. So maybe you could give us a sort of trend you see coming down the line, or a new way of thinking about mobile games that gives us reason for being optimistic.
I think one of the really exciting things is that now that we can't target who's seeing our adverts, we're getting a really diverse player base. And you know, there's like the negatives around that, from the fact that we can't monetize as well, and you know, all the business case, but it also means we've got more different types of people playing our games, which means we're going to make more varied, more exciting types of games to cater to that bigger audience. I think that's great, personally. And yeah, I think in terms of trends, I can see a lot of companies doing this already, and I think more will, where your next game design features or your next like story changes are going to be based off of what's performing well in adverts, where the creatives are leading, like the ad creatives are leading what choices you're actually making in the game. So that's one that I predict. Yeah.
Cool, great.
I think to your point about the targeting, because it's not possible to target, you know, whales, awful word, in the same way. You know, how about, you know, we just figure out ways to monetize everybody fairly and gently and in ways that they're happy with, and not, you know, have such predatory tactics that we've seen in the industry. So I think that's positive for sure. I would pull it back to cross-platform. I know you said, like, you know, what's going to be good for mobile, but you know, I think we're going cross-platform, and it's I don't think it solves any problems. I think it just creates more, but it does create more opportunities to be discovered, and to have, you know, to have that luck that you need to accompany all of the hard work that goes into these things.
So the moral of the story is make a cool game, release it on as many platforms as possible. Cross your fingers.
Profit.
Profit. Exactly. Great. Thanks, everyone. I think we have a few minutes for questions. If anyone has questions and is brave enough to grill the panel. The journalists don't have any questions. You, sir.
Yeah, anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, thank you for the talk. My question's directed towards Alice. you mentioned something about the future trends. I was just trying to catch hold of it. Can you explain it a little bit further about what you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. So I think what we've already started to see a little bit is, for instance, advertising campaigns that show pull the pin mini games. And then when those adverts perform really well, people actually then take that game design into their game. And I think that originally that wasn't necessarily the intention with those mini game adverts. I think it was more this ad, let's try it. Oh, it's performing well. And then people got mad about it not being actually in the game. Then they decided to put it in the game. The game performs better. So I think the trend is going to be that people will be looking to ad campaigns to see what the player appetite is there for.
Do you mean people creating the ad before the game is created, kind of like is a preview of what the game could be, rather than creating the game first and then advertising it afterwards?
You can actually do it both ways. So I was talking more in terms of a live game, making updates to that live game based off of the adverts. But it's actually also very common for mobile games to also have different adverts that are testing out their concepts for new games. So if you're trying to decide what story theme to have, you might have a fantasy version of a match 3 game and a sci-fi version of a match 3 game, and see what gets the most click-throughs and the lowest CPI and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
There's just to expand on that, there's a couple of examples out there on the App Store right now where, yeah, the sort of first 5 minutes of the game is effectively the advert. Often a like Doge character where you build a thing and the bees attack it. You might have seen this. Yeah. And then 5 minutes in, it's actually a card battler. Mm-hmm. That kind of UA hook goes away, and now you're into the game. And as wildly cynical as that approach appears to be, it obviously works. Otherwise, people wouldn't be doing it. That's kind of gone away a little bit. I think some of the ad platforms are clamping down on misleading ads a little bit more. But yeah, like you say, there are lots of studios out there who mock up pretend games, do some testing on social media networks, and then follow what the numbers tell them from there. So yeah, I think that is quite a common practice for some mobile game developers.
Hello. So you guys were mentioning that there are like a lot of games that are going from mobile into PC. You were saying it's mostly for web browser type of games. But I noticed that, for example, when you talk about PC gaming, you have Steam. And when you check games in Steam that look a bit like mobile, there seems to be like a bit of animosity from the community there. So do you have any recommendations for when you put a mobile game on PC to make it look less mobile, or on the other way around, if how to convince those users that if you want to play that game in PC is still good? Because I had the theory that some of those users are still playing on PC and mobile at the same time, but it seems like when they see a mobile game on PC, they don't like it. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, people hate it, right? Like, I mean, what a lot of PC gamers are like. They have that kind of elitist mentality to what they want to play. I think there's a couple of bits. One, scale your UI appropriately. Because people, as soon as they see a screenshot and it looks like the UI is designed for a small scale device, it's an immediate no-go for some people. Again, trying to pick an art direction that doesn't necessarily lean into realism, right? Trying to be something that is adaptable and leans more into its artistic direction that can work on both kind of lower powered mobile, but also PC as well. One big mistake we made recently is not adapting things like our store copy and screenshots to a PC audience. We just copied wholesale from a lot of the mobile stuff. That was a big mistake, right? We got feedback from some people just being like, listen, you guys have got way too many pastel colors for a Steam game in your screenshot selection, right? Also, we were leading with a non-binary protagonist as part of the lead as well. We got feedback to maybe nestle that further down the store description as well in certain ways. So yeah, I think it's a case of adapting UI, adapting art direction, and it's an obvious one, but making sure we're tailoring all of our assets and store copy to different audiences.
That's really sad.
Yeah. I mean, I asked different people. Our initial store page at launch wasn't performing amazingly well for Desta. So I got into contact with, probably like 5 other studio heads that make similar style mobile games. Have also done cross-platform stuff. And yeah, I said, listen, give me your honest, brutal feedback about some of this stuff. And we really had to reorder how we talk about things and the types of screenshots we use, which I know is probably obvious in hindsight, but I think at the end of the day, the primary demographic of Steam is mostly, middle-class white males within a certain age range, right? Who are relatively conservative in the grand scheme of things. Of course, there's niches for other indie games, but that's the bulk of the audience, right?
Right. If there are no more questions, I was going to ask the panel. I don't know if we have any more time, but I published a story about a studio that's kind of implemented AI tools into its production process today. And AI is very buzzy in the investor community right now. So I wondered if any of your teams have used AI in your production schedules. If you've played around with it, where do you see it fitting into mobile game development?
We're again.
Is anyone actually using it?
I can't believe it's the last question. This could be a whole panel just on this, right?
We'll go for another hour if you like.
We're again. It's all about art and artists and promoting independent artists. But we do a little bit. So we're planning a Kickstarter in a few months where we're printing mini versions of the decks. Now, when you send something to be printed, it gets cut out. So actually, the cards that we have all need expanding so they can be trimmed. So the obvious answer to that is AI outpainting, where we can automatically extend the artist's existing design. Well, that's AI image generation, right? Is that okay? I think it is. I mean, I'll probably get in touch with the artists and say, do you want to really extend this yourself so we can trim it off with the printers? Or can we use the AI for that? We've done some AI creatives for user acquisition to concept scenarios that we think might get people's attention and drive players. And they've performed well. Initially, they performed well, and the conversion for the ads was really good. But to the point about fake ads, actually we got lower quality players. That sounds such a horrible term, but anyone in mobile, like low quality players, just means they're not as good a match for your game. They don't retain as well. So because they didn't know what the game was and they clicked through because they saw a puppy playing a game or something, right? They're not as interested in your game in the first place. So you get people who are more likely to leave. So we're not using those at the moment.
Yeah, in my team, we're only using it for sort of internally concepting things, not for any of our content that's going out to players. And I guess personally, having been on like the content creation, game design side of things, I don't know, have really mixed feelings about it. Like it's here and people are using it. And so you either go along with that or fall behind. But I think it's a shame, particularly for juniors in the industry, that this is the way things are moving for content, because a lot of those content roles are how people get their first job in the industry.
Yeah. I mean, I can see a future where lots of mobile games sort of extended live ops and events schedules are kind of semi-automated through AI. It's not quite here yet, but it's coming. Maybe this time next year it will all be robots on stage. Who knows?
We're trying to write some kind of internal policy, like guideline stuff around things.
Really?
Yeah, just because people keep asking, we keep having conversations about it internally about, and you end up with people on different ends of the spectrum, which is like, we all use tools already that optimize our work in a certain way. And you get people on the other end of the spectrum who are like, no, I'm an artist and I definitely don't want anything like this to happen. And we do kind of need to make a statement. Like a lot of people end up working for us because of values. Yeah. So we do owe it to the employees to actually make a stand on where we think we should fall on it. So
yeah, I guess when it comes to attracting employees and retaining employees, I wouldn't be surprised if we soon start seeing companies not using AI as a listed benefit.
Yeah. It's the same way, right? Like we end up being a listed B Corp because it's a set of values that we adhere to that makes us a more attractive employer, right? So yeah, I would probably say some people would do that.
Yeah, I think for anyone in the creative industries that making it clear that you're a human creating a thing is going to become even more important, and sort of that there's a certain look that AI generated art has anyway, and you can kind of see it right now. As it improves, that will go away, but I think for now it's good to make it clear that a human made this. And
but how the hell do you prove that? Because I failed a lot of those tests now.
Really?
Maybe we can say handcrafted and it actually means something now.
Yeah.
As opposed to
organic.
fluff before, yeah.
You'll have to just film a time lapse of you making the thing, just to make it clear.
It'd be a deep fake though.
Oh God, we've opened a can of worms. That's a good time to end, I think, with the worms spilled and writhing on the floor. A lovely image to finish on as well. Thank you to the panelists. If everyone could just give them a lovely round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, tech team. Thanks everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.